The Outstanding Disabled Veteran of the Year is our most prestigious award. With it, we honor one individual whose character and integrity and service to disabled veterans provide an inspiring example for others to follow. This year's recipient is unique in many ways. It could be said that she began her career in service to her fellow disabled veterans even before she had fully recovered from the blast that claimed her legs and almost took her arm. Tammy Duckworth had narrowly survived an RPG attack on her helicopter in Iraq when she became the highest-ranking amputee at Walter Reed Army Medical Center. In that capacity, she became a conduit of assistance and encouragement for her fellow wounded soldiers and their families. Her leadership was noticed early on as she worked with her fellow soldiers and their elected officials to address the issues the wounded faced as they recovered at the hospital. Following the advice and encouragement of supportive lawmakers, she ran for Congress in 2006. Despite the narrow loss in a challenging race, her campaign brought bipartisan issues that face all disabled veterans onto the national stage. She was appointed director of the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs in 2006 and has brought her agency to national prominence for the benefits it administers its veterans and the services it provides under her guidance. Let's take a few minutes to look at the life of the outstanding disabled veteran we are honoring today.
My Alive Day is the anniversary of the shoot-down. This was a tradition that was taught to us at Walter Reed Army Hospital by the Vietnam veterans. I think some of them call it a life day. Basically, the anniversary of whatever day of your injury is going to be a day that you're not going to forget. Mine is November 12th. I grew up in Southeast Asia. My dad is a Vietnam veteran, well, was, he's gone now. And he just retired over there, married my mom who's Thai. And I grew up in Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia. Moving back to the U.S. after I grew up overseas was interesting. It was a bit of a culture shock. The fact that Americans could really speak their mind and do whatever they want to, that really impressed me. I finished high school in Hawaii, McKinley High School, and I went to University of Hawaii for my bachelor's degree and then on to a master's at George Washington. I decided to join the military late in life, and it was kind of a fluke. My friends actually encouraged me to take ROTC even as a graduate student just to see what it was like, and I loved it. So I decided to go ahead and go for my commission. At the time, there was a requirement for the men to select combat arms branches, and I thought it was absolutely unfair. I didn't even have to take that risk simply because I was a female. But aviation was the only branch that actually had a combat job open to women, which is a pilot. I really enjoyed my guard duty. I was actually their commander of a Black Hawk unit, the Black Hawk unit in Chicago, up until just a few months before we were deployed to Iraq. We were flying all over Baghdad, all over central and southern Iraq, just back and forth, probably 10, 15 stops throughout the day. The day I was injured was an ordinary day. Started to head back to Balad. About 3 minutes later was when we were hit. I heard tap, tap, tap on the side of the aircraft, metal on metal. I knew that we'd been hit instantly. What had happened was the rocket-propelled grenade that hit us hit right outside my door and had taken off, basically atomized my right leg. My left leg was apparently hanging by some skin, but I never looked down, and my arm was almost severed as well. I was slumped forward and passing in and out of consciousness, and I was trying to fly the aircraft, but I actually didn't have any legs, so what I thought was me pushing on the pedals. There was nothing there.
She tells that story of being shot down with the rocket-propelled grenade going into her helicopter, and how that co-pilot of hers, against all odds, landed that helicopter, and somehow, despite the threat of enemy fire, managed to drag her bloody body out of that helicopter and give her a chance to live.
He stumbled and he dropped me, It's hard to carry someone when they have 2 limbs gone and the third one's hanging by some skin, so he had 1 arm to carry me with. He fell, my body fell on him. He said by the time he got me to the second aircraft, he was completely covered in my blood and flesh. When they put us into the medevac helicopter, I was still bleeding, which meant that my heart was still beating. I did wake up in the hospital 10 days later with the pattern of my cyclic bruised into my hand, where all of the controls of the stick were. For the entire time, my husband sat next to my bed and he said 3 things. He said, "You were injured, you're at Walter Reed, you're safe." I think one of the first things I said to my husband was, you know, "Can you get me some pain medicine? My legs are on fire." And that's when he had to go grab the doc to tell me that my legs were gone.
There were several things that were amazing about Tammy. You know, when I first met her, she'd not only lost both legs, but there was a serious question about whether she was going to lose her right arm.
And so it was a real long process of just regaining strength and just learning to do everything all over again, and then getting fitted for prosthesis and learning to walk and just getting stronger every day.
I'd go out to Walter Reed, you know, make visits and walk through the areas where the amputees are going through rehab, and they were all talking about Tammy Duckworth. She was one of the few women who was out there going through rehab. They used to have this saying with some of these buff Marines and Rangers. They said, "Listen, if Tammy can do it, you can do it." So I knew that she was not only strong and positive and optimistic, but she turned out to be an inspiration to a lot of other soldiers.
I was the highest ranking amputee at Walter Reed, so there was a responsibility that I felt I had in setting an example. And I sort of felt that it was my responsibility to look out for these guys, just like my buddies looked out for me when I couldn't take care of myself. Towards the end of the summer of 2005, early fall, Senator Durbin called me and said, "Why don't you consider running for Congress?" I
thought she'd just say no, but she said, "I want to think about it." And I liked that response.
And so I called him back and said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so that's how I launched my congressional bid. I've had the very best health care in the world this past year. I'm walking today because I had state-of-the-art health care.
The Daily Herald calls Tammy Duckworth an independent voice.